Hi everybody. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to solve this equation in two different ways. We'll solve it over here one way, and then we'll solve it over here in a different way. And then we're going to look at this equation, which is similar to this one, but it looks similar, but it's different. You can see we have parentheses here. Here we didn't. And we're also going to solve this equation in two different ways. Okay, so let's get started. So over here, one way that I could solve this equation is to get rid of this constant term for this term which does not have a variable next to it. And this is subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So I can add 6 here to get rid of that. And whatever I do to one side, I have to do the same thing to the other side. So I'll add 6 to that side also. Remember, it's the equal sign that separates the two sides of the equation. So you don't want to add 6. You do not want to add 6 twice. You can see if I tried doing something like that, then I added the 6 twice to one side. That's not what you want to do. You want to add it once to the left side and once to the right side. Okay, so let's add 6 to both sides over here. And then these cancel. That was the whole point of doing that. And now we have negative 5q equals 30 plus 6 is 36. Okay, and then our last step here would be to divide both sides by negative 5, because this is negative 5 times q. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So we will divide by negative 5 on both sides. So we get q equals, and then a positive divided by a negative is negative. And 36 divided by 5 would be, let's see, 7.2, right? Okay, yes. Okay, and so we solved that first by getting rid of the 6 over here. Now let's see if we can solve the same equation by first getting rid of the negative 5, which is next to the q. Remember, it's these two numbers here that we need to get rid of, right? This 30 over here is not bothering us, because remember, we're trying to get the q alone. So in order to, alone on its side of the equation, okay? So the numbers that we need to get rid of are the negative 5 and the 6, and then the q will be alone. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of that negative 5 first. So remember, if we're doing multiplication or division, then we have to do it to every single term. Okay, so if I'm choosing to get rid of this negative 5 first, and right now the negative 5 is being multiplied with the q because they're right next to each other. So the inverse of that is division. So if I choose to do division first, then I have to do it to every single term. So I can't simply divide this by negative 5 and this by negative 5. I would also need to divide the 6, this by negative 5. So I'm going to extend this so that it covers, so that it's under this also. So negative 5q divided by negative 5 would just be q. And then I can treat, even though that's a minus sign, I can treat it like a negative. So negative 6 divided by negative 5 would be positive, and then 6 divided by 5 is 1.2. Okay, so we also have to divide this by the negative 5. You can't just do it to this. You have to do it to every term. And then 30 divided by negative 5 would be negative 6. All right, and finally, our last step would then be to get rid of this plus 1.2 over here, and then the q will be alone. So the inverse of addition is subtraction, so we will subtract 1.2 from both sides. And we get q is equal to, here the symbols are the same. So we have a negative here and a minus here. I like to say same symbols, we add and keep the symbol. So that's going to be a negative 7.2. All right. And of course, we could check our answer by plugging this number back into the original equation for q. So we have, I'll do it over here, negative 5 And then q we figured out was negative 7.2. Let's make sure that that's correct. Negative 5 times negative 7.2, and then minus 6 equals 30. Let's see, minus 6 equals 30. So a negative times a negative is positive, and 5 times 7.2 is 36. You can check a calculator if you don't believe me, or better yet, do it by hand. So then this is 36, and then minus 6 equals 30. Well, 36 minus 6 is 30, so I get 30 on the left side, and I had 30 on the right side to begin with, so that is good. So both sides are the same, which means that negative 7.2 is the correct answer for Q. That is the number that, when we plug it into the original equation, makes both sides the same. All right, now let's take a look at this other equation over here, which looks very similar to the first equation, except we have parentheses here, so we need to be a little bit careful about how we solve this. Now, we cannot begin by adding 6 to both sides. So that's a common mistake. A lot of students would try to do this. They would try to get rid of this minus 6 first, just like we did the first time in the previous example. The problem with doing that is that this 6 is not really a 6. What do I mean by that? If I distribute here, I can see that I get negative 5 times q is just negative 5q, and then negative 5 times, this is a subtraction, but I'll treat it like negative. So negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30. Okay, and then just copy the rest. So I just multiplied this by this also. So the reason that I can't get rid of this by simply adding 6 is because this 6 right now is getting multiplied by the negative 5. So actually what we have over here is a plus 30 term. Okay, so really if I wanted to get rid of it, then I could distribute here. So that's one way to solve this equation, is to distribute first, and then you can go ahead and get rid of this term over here. So that is plus 30, so we can do the inverse of that. We can subtract 30 from both sides, okay? So I'm subtracting 30 over here, not because this is a 30. That just happened to be a coincidence that I ended up with a 30 here and a 30 here. I'm subtracting 30 from this side because that's what I did to this side, and whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other side as well. So we're subtracting 30 from both sides, and this cancels. We get negative 5q equals, and then 30 minus 30 is 0. So our next step is going to be to divide both sides by negative 5. That cancels. We get q equals 0 divided by negative 5 is just 0. By the way, there's no positive 0 or negative 0. It's just 0. 0 is neither positive nor negative, because a positive number means something that's greater than 0. A negative number means something that's less than 0. So 0 is not greater than itself, and it's not less than itself. It's just itself. So 0 is just 0. Okay. So that's one way that I can solve this equation, by first distributing. Now there is another way that I can solve this equation. I can solve it by dividing first by negative 5. So what does it mean when a number is next to parentheses? It means that this negative 5 is getting multiplied with everything that's in these parentheses over here. Well, the inverse of multiplication is division. So if I want to get rid of this negative 5 as my first step, I could divide by negative 5. Okay, now over here, these negative 5s would cancel, and we would just copy this, so we get q minus 6 equals, and then 30 divided by negative 5. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. A positive divided by a negative is negative. So I'm going to get negative 6 over here. Now let me pause there before I finish this. If you've been following everything that I've been saying up to this point very closely, then you might be confused right now. Because remember, I said if we ever multiply or divide both sides of an equation, then we have to do it to every single term. Well, I divided both sides of the equation here by -5. So I was doing division there. So why didn't I divide this 6 by -5? Why did I just leave this the way that it was before? How come I didn't divide it? Well, the reason that we didn't do it this time, and what makes this equation different from that first equation that we did earlier in the video, is that all of this is in parentheses here. It's all getting multiplied by this -5 first before we do the division. So even though I have it over here, let me just write it out again. We have -5 times q minus 6. That means that it's -5 times q, which is -5q, and -5 times this -6 term, which we can treat as a negative. So -5 times -6, which is plus 30. So because this expression is really equal to -5q plus 30, this expression and this expression are equivalent. So that means that when we divide by -5, like we wrote over here, then if I do this divided by -5, I get -5q divided by -5 is just q. And if I do 30 divided by -5, I get -6, which I can write as -6. So you can see that that rule that I told you before, that if you multiply or divide, you have to do it to every single term, that rule is correct. It didn't seem like we did it over here, but really we did if we remember that this expression is really equivalent to this. So we can see that if we divide by -5, then we do, in fact, in the end, we just get what we had inside the parentheses to begin with. Okay, so it looked for a second like I might have broken my rule, but really I didn't. Okay. All right. So moving on, what's the last thing that we need to do to solve this equation? Well, to get the q by itself, we have to get rid of this -6. So that's subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So we will add 6 to both sides. Okay, and it cancels here. We just get q. Remember, the logic there is that if I start with some number q, and then I subtract 6, and then I add 6, I just get that number q back, right? So for example, 10 minus 6 is 4, and then 4 plus 6 is 10. So if this was a 10, then I started with 10, I'm going to end up with 10 again if I subtract 6 and then add 6 right back. Okay, but it's not a 10. We don't know what it is yet. We're about to find out. So we'll just write q over here, and then on the other side, -6 plus 6 would give us 0. Okay, so just like we got over here, we got q equals 0. We got the same answer, we just did it in a different way. Here we distributed first. Here we got rid of that -5 first. Okay, now I always like to, well, most of the time. To be honest, I don't always do it, but I should. Let's check our answer by plugging it back into the original equation. So if we're saying that q is equal to 0, then what we're really saying is if we replace the q over here with 0, then both sides of the equal sign should be the same. Well, let's check that. So -5 times, I'm going to replace the q with 0. So 0 and then -6, then close the parentheses, equals 30. Okay, well, 0 minus 6 is -6. Think about a number. If I start at a number line at 0 and then I subtract 6, meaning I go to the left 6 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I would end up at -6, right? So that wasn't so hard. 0 minus 6 is -6. So I have -5 times -6 equals 30. Is that a true statement? Yes, it is, because -5 times -6 would be positive 30. So I get positive 30 over here, and I had positive 30 over here. So that is correct. Okay? So that's it, and have a great day.